How are you doing today? Me, I'm freaking exhausted. I just got done with an 11-hour stream and I am wiped. But I want to talk to you about some stuff that I think often gets kind of like left out, swept under the radar, and that's some like new fragments that we got. Yeah, we got new fragments to both Solar, Arc, and Void, 2 of them each, and all of them very, very strong, very, very powerful, and could be build defining and or game breaking depending on how good these actually end up being with the correct mix and match. I'm going to give you some general use cases I can suggest just off the top of my head. I am going off script here, so please bear with me. Like I said, I'm freaking tired and I just want to give you some information because I do think this is going to help you out. So I don't normally ask this early, but you know, hit the like button, subscribe, because it'll just make me feel good. No other reason than dopamine. Let's first start by talking about the new things that we got kind of just added in as a bonus that affected a lot of the fragments that we already had. Basically, we have things like fire sprites and void breaches. Fire sprites will give you grenade energy whenever you're using solar, because this is a solar specific thing. Whenever you go and pick them up, there's plenty of ways to get it. We used Emperor of Searing for our particular setup, which is a great way of doing that. And for Void, which is based on class ability energy, picking up a Void Breach will give you class ability energy. So it all kind of makes sense. They're stationary things. They're kind of like stasis shards in a lot of ways, but let's get into the rest of these here, specifically starting with Ember of Resolve on Solar. Solar Grenade Final Blows cure you. I can only imagine how powerful this is going to be, because I'm sure the first thing you started to rattle off at the top of your head was like the Spine of Ahamkara on the Hunters, the Starfire Protocol on Warlocks, even something odd like Ashen Wake on Titans. There's a lot of ways to get this to happen for you, and getting health off of it for what is effectively no little extra effort other than a missing fragment slot is extremely strong, but it gets better. Ember of Mercy, when you revive an ally, you and another nearby ally gain restoration. This includes the person that you picked up, by the way. That by itself, not super interesting, but picking up a fire sprite grants restoration, and like I talked about, there's plenty of ways to get restoration. Ember of Searing is the way that we did it, which just requires you to scorch a target. Granting restoration is a great way to guarantee that you are not going to die, or you're going to have an advantage going into a fight, and a big advantage if that's in PvP. This is an extremely strong fragment that I strongly encourage you to investigate, even if that whole the reviving thing really isn't your particular cup of tea. The getting the restoration off of a fire sprite will absolutely be your cup of tea if you can build around it. Let's go into Void. Starting off here, we have the Echo of Vigilance. You might see some people already running around with this in PvP, because on paper and in reality, it's ridiculous. I am frankly at a loss for words that this exists, but you know what? I guess more power to us as Void mains, because holy damn. Defeating a target while your shields are depleted grants you temporary Void Overshield. Now the wording on this is a little bit tricky, in that most of the time when the effect that it's going for, which is that you have no shields, it would say critically wounded, but it says depleted. So it's not going to be something where like you take a little bit of damage, you can get a Void Overshield. No, you have to go into the red. But when you do, you get about 4 seconds by default of a full Void Overshield. I am talking the same type of Void Overshield that you would get if you were on a Titan and you're using the Bastion aspect. That type of overshield. It's 40-ish health as we were able to test this. This is extremely strong, and you can set this up with a whole bunch of other stuff. Void overshields we've found many ways to make void overshields work for us in other builds in the past. You know, yeah, Titans are the big ones for this one, right? So this is insane. I have no idea why this exists. I'm going to be completely honest. But next up is Echo of Cessation. I think. Finisher final blows create a burst of void damage that cause nearby combatants to become volatile. Very straightforward. It's a finisher type effect. When you do a finisher, which obviously isn't going to happen in PvP, about 6 to 8 meter radius around you and the target, you'll cause them to be volatile. Cool, neat, good for crowd control. But the following bit is where it really gets interesting. Defeating volatile targets creates a void breach, which is a great way to get those void breaches, because there's a lot of ways to cause volatile. Think of like a Falcon Harburg on Hunter. The melee on the Warlock, as well as other things you can do with maybe the collective obligations, Titans in general with their controlled demolition stuff. There's so many ways that you can get volatile to happen that allow you to get those void breaches back, that allow you to get your class ability energy back, to allow you to get the loop going all over again. It's fantastic. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. And Arc, which didn't really get any new ways to play around ionic traces, unlike the others on the other subclasses, where we got something that kind of played into the new stuff that we got, or something to play around the collectibles that we have. We instead got, first of all, Spark of Haste. You have greatly increased resilience, recovery, and mobility while sprinting. Now, if you're like me and you saw that and you thought immediately, I mean, I guess. I don't know if I really care that much about having those stats. I mean, maybe I get my class ability energy back because I have those stats in those areas, which, you know, obviously one of those is going to affect my classes because, you know, mobility for Hunter, resilience for Titan, and, you know, recovery for Warlock. I mean, I guess. But this is a really significant bump. We were able to test this by taking an Ace of Spades with a Memento Mori and Radiant setup. Now, if you don't know, in PvP, Memento Mori plus Radiant brings it up to 99 damage to a headshot, which means that unless you are exactly 100 resilience or more, you will die to 2 taps headshots. We were able to survive a 2-tap headshot combo, meaning we had 10 resilience while we were at 7 resilience, meaning that this bumps it up by 30 points. This is, they're not joking, a significant increase in your overall stats. That means that even if you're not even a Warlock, you get damaged, you run away, that's 30 extra recovery just for sprinting. It is the freest way to get stats if you've ever wanted it in the game. It's fantastic. I strongly encourage you to investigate this, especially if you're kind of low in those stat areas and you just want to be tanky. Obviously, overstacking isn't going to do anything for you, but something to keep in mind. And the next thing that follows that is the Spark of Instinct. While critically wounded, taking damage emits a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts targets. Now, the damage itself, I was not expecting this to work in PvP, by the way, because the last time that we had this was a Charge of Light thing and it did not work. But this works in PvP. It's not much damage, it's like maybe 10 damage. We weren't able to get an exact number, but like super small amount of damage. But it does jolt targets, which can set up other things. There's a lot of ways you can set jolts up for builds and so on and so forth. So being a close and personal in people's no-no square, yeah, you're gonna see that happen with Arc, and you can get them again for free just by being in close proximity to literally any targets. You'll be able to jolt them if they damage you. Again, an extremely strong fragment, definitely worth keeping in mind. Strand has a lot of work cut out for it. I've already seen some stuff come out about Strand that I'm curious about. I really want to see how far we can go with this. It definitely doesn't look like Strand is going to be as broken as Stasis was on day one, just kind of messing around with it. But again, we're still in the honeymoon phase, so who can say? But seeing some of this stuff just for the light subclasses that we already have fully functioning, that if you've already had the class, you can go buy for my core right now for just a handful of Glimmer and a little bit of time. It's gonna have some competition cut out for it. So definitely go give that a check if you like the channel, if you're willing to support my 11-hour crazy rant that is eventually come before you here today. Please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. But in the meantime, bless your faces. Deuces.